Hello folks, we're here today at Ploughing 2024 and I'm joined by Bord Bia's Joe Burke. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about how the beef markets have been this year?
Yeah, thanks, Breffney. Great to be here. Such sunny weather as well. Yeah, the beef markets have been strong. I suppose started off the year in, slightly more sluggish position. Demand at the time wasn't quite as robust, I suppose, as it has ended up being throughout the kind of late summer and autumn months. But certainly there's a very positive momentum after coming into the trade. Numbers were quite strong earlier in the year and fell off then, partly as a result of the slow growing conditions, and I suppose grazing didn't really get off to a strong start until well into the summer months. So while we've seen in the last few weeks cattle numbers picking up and the weekly cattle kill reaching over 37,000, that hasn't dampened the trade or the demand. Certainly prices currently would be running up to 40 cents a kilo ahead of this time last year.
So Joe, of course, we've seen over the past 4 consecutive weeks supply has been increasing, the supplies of cattle, but I suppose the demand must be out there. You know, we're seeing prices stay very steady, obviously.
Yeah, I suppose key export markets, Breffney, local production in Britain and across Europe has been down even on last year's levels. Like last year, production of beef across Europe fell by more than 3.5%. And there is no indication of any recovery again this year. So again, while inflationary pressures aren't as severe as they would have been for the last couple of years, we're still not seeing massive demand for the steak cuts or the higher priced cuts. But we are, I suppose, seeing a recovery in the demand for forequarter beef, for mince, for burgers, for manufacturing. That is one of the key factors really that has driven the beef trade over the last few months.
And of course cow price as well is staying fairly positive, and that's obviously a factor of that as well.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, similar to the prime cattle, cow prices have been, up to 50 cents a kilo ahead of this time last year. And again, while the number of cows being slaughtered has increased fairly strongly on even very high levels of last year, that hasn't met any resistance in terms of the demand for those animals.
And Joe, I suppose it's very hard to predict what's going to happen going into the future, especially in the beef trade. But is there any signals there to indicate what the market might do in even, we say, the near future?
Yeah, I suppose a couple of the factors closer to home are a little bit easier to predict. So if we look at the likely kind of supply profile over the next few months or even over the next year, we've seen very, very strong levels of movements of calves out of the country for the last 2 years. So far this year, over 280,000 animals have been sent out live in total, including calves and older cattle. So that would be, a really, I suppose, strong influence on the supply profile over the next year and over the next 2 years. So certainly, Breffney, our own local supplies look set to remain relatively tight for the foreseeable future. And similarly then, I suppose, on the supply side in the UK, they're forecasting tighter numbers. It's not just here in Ireland as well that we're seeing lighter carcass weights, that the numbers of kilos of beef that we have coming from the finished animals obviously is down. So all of those factors are leading to a relatively tight market, and demand, while it hasn't spurred on or it hasn't increased on other years, but actually just that tightness combined with what we would kind of describe as a fairly stable market, a fairly steady market, has led to a good situation anyway, certainly in the market for producers, for sellers.
And Joe, of course, that's the trend we're seeing across Europe where supplies are down.
Yeah, so cattle prices earlier in the year, the Irish cattle price on average was ahead of the European cattle price. That situation has reversed over the last few weeks, where even though the price here is steady and even it increased by a few cents over the course of over the last few weeks, in spite of that, the EU average male cattle price has pushed on a bit. It's probably running about 10 cents a kilo above of our average Irish male cattle prices. And in the UK, similarly, cattle prices are the strongest that they have been throughout the year. In that market, on average, our grade steers are running over 70 cents a kilo ahead of the equivalent prices here.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks, Breffney.